Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown slate that we have for tonight on DraftKings. We have an NFC West Showdown for the final game of the wild card round. We have the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Arizona Cardinals, which should be a pretty solid game. Only a 3.5-point spread here. Total very close to 50 points. Hopefully it's one of the better playoff games that we've had so far this year, because there's been several games so far this weekend that have been just not very fun to watch, blowouts, and had a couple of good games, but for the most part, I would say they could have been a lot better. And the officiating, once again, just kind of taking over. So hopefully we don't have any of that in this game. We can just enjoy a very, very solid football game. But we have a lot of exciting players to talk about, so I am pretty excited for this slate. We're going to go position by position, and then we're going to try to build a lineup as we go through. So if you think that sounds good, you might as well hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And also leaving a like on the video really does help me out, and I really do appreciate it. And if you want to check out the Patreon, you know where to find it. Link can be found down below in the description for that. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 match contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, when you sign up on Prize Picks, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100. Use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, you will start with the quarterback position. And both these guys are fantastic plays. Now, I prefer Kyler Murray over Matthew Stafford just because Kyler does have that rushing upside, which does give him a safer floor and a higher ceiling as well. Matthew Stafford is a fine quarterback, a guy that averages nearly 300 passing yards per game and multiple passing touchdowns. But without that rushing floor, it does make him a little bit riskier. Plus, lately, later half in the season, he's definitely been prone to some pretty subpar games, I will say. But he's got fantastic pass catching options. He's got the top guy of the season in Cooper Kupp. But Kyler Murray has his own good weapons as well. Obviously, no DeAndre Hopkins, but Zach Ertz, Christian Kirk might get Rondale Moore back. You have Chase Edmonds and maybe James Conner in the backfield, and then AJ Green as well. So it's not like there's any shortage of options for either of these quarterbacks. I'm just saying I do prefer Kyler if it comes down to 1v1 situation. But both these guys are in fantastic spots. It should be a pretty high-scoring, fast-paced game for the most part. But just looking at the matchup column for both of these guys, I'm not really overly concerned about matchups for either, to be honest. But Kyler Murray does get a little bit of a tougher matchup here. The Rams are 5th DVA versus the pass, allowing the 8th fewest points per game at the quarterback position. The Cardinals are not too far behind, though. 6th DVA versus the pass, 11th versus fantasy quarterbacks. Like projection-wise, I have these guys within a point of each other. I do have a slight edge to Kyler Murray, but I guess it mostly will come down to your roster construction in your lineup. But now the question isn't if I want to play these guys or not. Like if I have the money in the flex spot, yeah, I'm trying to get as much Kyler or Matthew Stafford as possible. I think the question is the captain spot. How much do you want to captain these guys? Matthew Stafford, I could see being a little bit low in the captain spot on him just because I'd rather get one of his pass catching options because Matthew Stafford's not going to get the job done by himself. And if Stafford has a good game, I think there's a very strong chance that one of his pass catching options is in the captain spot over Matthew Stafford. Meanwhile, Kyler Murray, if he does some damage on the ground with his legs, I'd say he's more likely to be an optimal captain over Stafford. So I'd lean my ownership more towards Murray than with Stafford when it comes down to distributing your captain ownership when it comes to these two quarterbacks. Heading over to our lineup, I'm not going to plug either quarterback in the captain spot, and I'm actually going to leave Stafford out for right now. If we can fit him at the end, great, but we still have a guy named Cooper Kupp that I feel like is a must play. Like, just imagine fading Cooper Kupp. If say you were building one lineup, not having Cooper Kupp just sounds terrifying and it sounds like a bad time. So I'm not going to go that route. The question is, do you want to captain him or not? As of right now, I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to leave Kyler out of the captain spot, give myself some more added flexibility as we break down the rest of the positions here. And we're just going to plug him in the flex spot. Because I think you're going to need at least one quarterback in the flex spot. I would not feel comfortable not having one or the other. Two might be pushing it in some lineups because, again, Kupp is massively expensive at $13,000. So I'm going to plug in Murray for now, and we'll see what fits as we talk through it. Moving on to the running back position, we will start with the Arizona Cardinals here first. And we have a big question mark because as of right now, we do not know if James Conner is going to play or not. If James Conner is out, that basically makes Chase Edmonds the top play on the slate. Only $5,000. They're clear-cut RB1 in that offense. The only guy that doesn't have an injury designation heading into this game. He's heavily used in the passing game. Like, it would be impossible for me to fade Chase Edmonds if I was building one lineup. Yeah, if you're building 150, you're not going to have Chase Edmonds on 150. But Edmonds would point per dollar wise would project very well. And even with James Conner in right now, I have him for around 16 some fantasy points. I have Edmonds for around 12 something. If Conner is out, Edmonds was already a fine play at 5,000, but he comes an excellent play. So just keep that in mind. Conner looking like he's going to be a game time decision. Been pretty banged up all week. Finally got in a little bit of a practice very late, but Chase Edmonds got a full practice in. So even then, we could see Edmonds just take on a larger role than normal. For the most part, we usually see these guys split, and Edmonds more so used in the passing game. But if Conner is out, like I said, love Chase Edmonds at that price point. Don't care about the matchup or anything. Just pure volume and just opportunity standpoint would be for Edmonds. And Edmonds is a pretty talented running back as well. We've seen Kyler Murray utilize his running backs in the passing game recently. As for the Los Angeles Rams, basically going to be a two-man show here of Sony Michel and Cam Akers. We saw Akers return last week after a long injury with his Achilles. Kind of incredible he's even back, but he saw 20% of the snaps last week. Did have 3 targets and also caught 3 of them, and he also had 5 carries. Didn't do much with them, only 3 yards. Similar to Sony Michel, where he couldn't really get anything going on the ground until very, very late in the game. I mean, both those guys were just kind of looked like they're running through mud or something. They just can't get anything going versus the Baltimore Ravens. But I think they're interesting tournament plays. Now, they did price Akers up a lot for a guy that only played 20% of the snaps last week. I assume Akers' role will increase, but if that's only like 30 to 35% of the snaps, is he worth $6,600? Probably not, unless he happens to fall into the end zone. And as we all know, we can't really project touchdowns. So if you're playing a Ram running back, I would prefer Michel over Akers just because I'm fairly confident that Michel will get more volume. But when it comes to the goal line touches, I think it'll be anyone's best guess. They're really just riding the hot hand there. So I think they're interesting tournament plays, but in cash, probably a decent place to try to stay away from. And moving on to the wide receiver position, we do have several really fun plays here, although I think for the most part, it's just going to come down to what your roster construction looks like, because outside of Cooper Kupp, all these guys are pretty similar plays for the most part. But we'll start with Kupp here first. I know the price tag is very expensive. We'll start with the Rams as a whole. So you'd have Cooper Kupp at $13,000, Odell Beckham Jr. at $6,800, Van Jefferson, who is currently questionable. I'm going to assume he plays, but if he doesn't, obviously that is a bump to a guy like Odell and maybe a little bit of Tyler Higbee as well. And Ben Skowronek should see some extra playing time. But Van Jefferson and Skowronek, who we just talked about, really the only relevant wide receivers on this roster. But Cooper Kupp here, $13,000. Is he insanely expensive? Yes. Is it going to be a little bit tougher to fit him in? Yes. But when the guy goes for like 20 to 40 fantasy points each and every single week, like he's the Derrick Henry of the wide receiver position. He's going to get fed each and every single week. I realize the past 2 weeks, he's seen the season low in targets and 7-7 back-to-back games, but this is the playoffs. It's Cooper Kupp. He's probably going to get you 10 plus targets, probably 100 plus yards. I'd be shocked if he doesn't find the end zone. You're probably going to want Cooper Kupp in your lineups. The Cardinals have not been a good team versus wide receivers so far this season. And actually, both these teams haven't, ranking 28 and 29. So everybody gets a decent matchup, I'd say, just looking at the box scores over the course of the season. But don't care about matchups with Cooper Kupp. He'll be just fine. Try to fit him in. And if you can't fit him in, it's going to suck a lot. You're going to be very sweaty and nervous throughout the game. But guys like Odell and Van Jefferson are fine secondary plays. Odell's been kind of getting lucky with touchdowns because the yardage just hasn't really been there. But he is scoring touchdowns a lot. And again, if Van Jefferson happens to miss, I'm not expecting that. But if he does, there's a nice boost for him as well. And as far as the Cardinals go, obviously no DeAndre Hopkins still. So we're left with Christian Kirk at $7,000, AJ Green at $5,800. Then you have Rondell Moore, who is possible to return. He is questionable. He hasn't played in like 3 games. So he might be returning with his ADOT of like 0 nearly. Wesley has been filling in quite nicely. He's been playing a lot of snaps. He got up to nearly 80% of the snaps last week. And Andy Isabella is basically an afterthought and not someone I would really consider playing. But looking at the target distributions so far this year, so when Hopkins got hurt, he was sporting just around a 20% target share and just over 5 targets per game. Christian Kirk, he's definitely seen an uptick in targets. Now, last week, it did not really do much whatsoever. Kind of, I don't even want to say saved his day because he still finished with like 6 fantasy points, but he had that nice long catch till he's boosted up a little bit. But it was not a pretty week for Christian Kirk. But besides that, he's been on double-digit targets without DeAndre Hopkins, so I still think he's a very safe and solid play. AJ Green, decent ceiling there. I know it doesn't feel great playing Green, but the targets have been there for him, and he is $1,200 cheaper than Christian Kirk, and I feel like they're, for the most part, pretty similar plays. Rondell Moore, if he plays, obviously he's going to hurt a guy like Wesley just because I mean, you just add another wide receiver in the mix. Wesley wasn't that big of a threat with Moore out there. I do think the playing time will go down a little bit, but Rondell Moore has a market share of the air yards this season below 3% and an 8 out of 1.5. So he's gonna have to just break open a big play if he catches like a catch around the line of scrimmage and just has to break free and get some good blocking. So I don't love the price tag at nearly $5,000. If Moore was around $2,000, I'd be a lot more interested. But that price is a little steep for me for a guy that's probably not gonna get any deep shots. And then Skowronek, if Jefferson happened to miss, he would get a little bit of a boost at $1,200. But again, not sure what's going to happen there. But lots of good plays here. But to make it simple, just try to find a way to get Kupp in. All right, so heading back over to our lineup. We talked about running backs and we talked about wide receivers. So we're going to stick with those two positions. And my big question is, do I want to captain Kupp or do I want to not captain Kupp? Now, if I captain Kupp, we're talking nearly $20,000, $19,500. This is like when CMC was on that one showdown slate, and on Lamar Jackson, he can get up there in the price tag as well. So this is a hefty price point. If we plug him in, we're talking just under $5,000 left per player, which is doable. Not saying it's not doable. We are leaving out some other solid players, although I don't think it's going to be that hard to put together a really solid lineup, because if we happen to just go the Chase Edmonds route, even if James Conner plays, I still think we can play Edmonds because he's obviously banged up a little bit. Edmonds should be just fully good to go. But if Conner is out, I'm probably looking at captain Edmonds, to be honest. So if we go with this build first, we'd have just under $4,800. If you happen to swap this, go Cooper Kupp at flex and Chase Edmonds at the captain spot, it's definitely going to give you some more added flexibility. Maybe you could go with the double quarterback route, because if you go Kupp and the captain, I'm thinking 2 QB might be a little bit rough if you still want some other solid mid-range players. So just plugging in Edmonds in the captain spot, instead of just under $4,700, we have $6,100 remaining. So I'm not exactly sure which way I want to go yet. But for right now, why don't we just leave Kupp in the captain, and then we'll put Edmonds in the flex, and then we'll see what it looks like differently maybe at the end, and we can swap a couple things around. On to the tight end position, it's pretty easy here because everybody below Higbee is basically irrelevant, unless one of those guys happen to miss, which I don't think anyone's expecting. So it's just Zach Ertz here for the Cardinals and Higbee for the LA Rams. I wouldn't say they're my favorite plays out there. They might be a little bit expensive, but they are solid plays nonetheless. Zach Ertz is a guy over the past month has been pushing for around double-digit targets each and every single week. The matchup is a little bit tough versus the Rams, but he will be busy, and I would expect probably 6-7 plus targets in this game. And I know $6,200 doesn't feel great, but I do think he's a pretty interesting turn-up play. And Higbee would be a guy that would benefit with no Van Jefferson, but Higbee basically runs all the routes and all the snaps for the Rams, the tight end position, so he's always going to be on the field, and he's a fine play. Now, if he doesn't score a touchdown, probably not going to be too happy with his services for around $5,400, but there's always a chance he can score or just have a decent game, like 5-6 catches for 60-70 yards. I think it's more likely that he only pays off if he happens to get to the end zone, because if you're looking at his numbers on the season, talking about a guy that averages under 40 yards per game and under 4 catches on 5 targets with a 15% target share. So really, everybody Bland and below is all irrelevant. Just stick to the 2 top guys unless you're just really hunting for a YOLO play down low, but it's probably not going to work out. And as far as defenses go, you guys know my position on these guys. I'm either even to the field or I'm way underweight. And I feel like this is one of those slates where I feel pretty good about being very underweight on both defenses. Yes, I know Stafford has been turning the ball over quite often recently, but I mean, unless they get a defensive touchdown, which is certainly always possible, but I still don't think the chances of that happening are enough for me to want to warrant playing a ton of these defenses, and I would have absolutely zero in the captain spot. I just have a hard time seeing a defense, and again with a 50-point over-under, very close to a 3.5 point spread being optimal outside of a very fluky situation. As for the kickers, though, I always have more interest in the kickers, and we are playing in a dome, so it's obviously optimal kicking conditions, which is always going to be a boost to the kickers playing in LA. We have Matt Gay for the Rams, who has the higher implied team total. Then we have Matt Prater at $4,000. Both these guys are fine plays. They're a little bit expensive, but I think rightfully so, because these guys could definitely put up some points, and both offenses should be in scoring position quite often. I actually think both defenses are good enough to maybe allow yards, but get stops around the red zone or in field goal range, so that could be a boost for the kickers as well. Hard to project these guys, have them both in the 8-point range, but I think they're very fine flex plays, with maybe a sprinkle in the captain spot if you are doing MME. And then heading over to our lineup to finish this off. And again, if anyone's just scrolling all the way to the end of this video to see what lineup I build, there's no guarantee I use this. I'm just putting this together as we talk through it, so don't just copy and paste it. And if you do, well, good luck, but I didn't recommend doing this. So anyway, we have just under $5,000 left to do with the Cooper Kupp captain route. And I'm probably not going to go stars and scrubs here, because if I throw in Matthew Stafford, I'm left with $1,700 left per player, which, yeah, sure, we could make that work if you want to throw in a Skyroneck here at $1,200 and a Wesley, maybe if Rondell Moore happens to not suit up, but I am not confident in any of these cheap plays. Now, obviously, you can interchange Kyler Murray or Matthew Stafford. And if you are going the Kupp route, I mean, it does make sense to want to get Matthew Stafford here in the flex spot, but I'm just going to make my own rules right now and just keep in Kyler Murray, because projection-wise, I do like that a little bit better. I would like to get one of those kickers in. I'll probably throw in Matt Gay. I mean, they're basically the same play to me, so I don't really think it matters too much. If you happen to go the Matt Gay route, we're left with right around $5,000, which if Van Jefferson plays, you can play him at $5,200. If he happens to be out, that is a boost for Tyler Higbee, although, I mean, if Van Jefferson plays, it's not like we can't play Tyler Higbee or anything. I don't want to make it sound like that, but if we plug in Higbee, and then we have $4,700 left, you can play Rondell Moore. You could throw in Matt Prater if you happen to go the Chase Edmonds route at captain and afford yourself some extra salary savings there. So I'm plugging Kupp there, and then putting Edmonds in the captain spot. I believe he is $7,500. So if we take out Higbee, take out Matt Gay, we're left with that same core we started with. $6,100 left. Now you probably could afford getting Matthew Stafford in. We'll try it. So yeah, $3,750 left for the last two players. You are pushing it a little bit. If you want to throw in a kicker, we'll throw in Matt Prater, $3,500 left. You're stuck with one of these scrubs, which doesn't feel great. So if you wanted to drop Matthew Stafford to a skill position player, like a guy like Christian Kirk, just get that pairing with Kyler Murray, $7,300 left. You can get Odell, Cam Akers, Zach Ertz. That looks a little bit better. So many ways we can go, but this should be a very fun slate of a lot of fantasy relevant players. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to check out the Patreon, link is down below in the description for that. NFL, NBA, NASCAR coming up very, very soon, than baseball in the coming months if you want to check out the extra content over there. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, and as of right now, if you sign over there, you get a free money bonus up to $100 instant deposit match. So it's free money. You want to use it to your advantage. When you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. That'll be it. I'll get out of here, and I wish you guys the best of luck and enjoy the last game of Wild Card Weekend.